So I don't know when the stream flicked on, but Paul was quite literally playing Call of Duty right up until that intro started, and I heard clicking, and I assumed that he was actually still playing.
No.
No, you didn't. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll do this in the
Welcome
meantime.
home, Brad.
Folks, today. Oh yeah. Well, hold on. Hold that thought. Hold that thought, Paul. Because today's show is brought to you by SmartDeploy. These nice people back here. They specialize in computer imaging, so your IT team doesn't have to. Check them out, please, at smartdeploy.com/therot. And as Paul just quickly interrupted, as per usual, I am home.
I noticed that's your bag in the background.
Yeah, that is.
You're like home and not even unpacked.
No, man, dude, I got up at 3:45 Central Time, which is what 4:45 Eastern Time. Took a flight,
which, as I observed to you privately, is a god awful time to get up, except for one thing: you're going home.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And that's it. My bag is right there. It's still packed with the Surface Book 2 in there, all nestled nicely. Hopefully that it still works after being, tossed around through the cabin and whatnot. But I am home. I am extremely tired. 8 seconds after this podcast ends, I'm going to close my eyes and probably sleep in this chair.
Yep, I would.
And go pick my kid up and not sleep.
Here's the thing, actually, interesting side note related to what we're talking about. I just observed to my wife this morning in the kitchen that last night I slept for 8 hours, which for me is very unusual. In fact, if you were to look back at like the past year, I probably only slept that long, maybe 3, maybe 4 times, something like that. And this is absolutely the end effects of the trip that we just went on together. That I've been kind of suffering from sleep-related whatever this week. And then last night I finally just slept like through and I woke up like $1 million. In fact, I wrote over 5,000 words before lunchtime today. But you didn't have that benefit. No,
I didn't.
Were home for, I don't know, a day and a half, something like that. And then you flew again. I can't even imagine doing that.
Approximately 36 hours. And I mean, the nice thing is at least I have nothing to do this weekend. And by nothing to do, I mean, I have everything to do on the weekend. So, I'm gonna recover here.
I am sure your family will be very understanding and will exclude you from the reindeer games.
Paul, I do have some beef to bring up with you. I was looking at your most recent premium Ask Paul Anything post, and I believe in there you wrote that you actually said that you have a good sense of direction.
Yeah, I'm going to just point out that phrase occurs approximately 3,950 words into a 4,000-word article, and I was positive you would not see it. Positive. Just positive. I'm like, he's flying home today. I could throw in this thing and he will not see it, and I will never have to deal with the repercussions of it.
Yeah, no. I was browsing it, and I think I have some documented evidence. Now, granted, I will fully admit that I do slice and cut some of this together to make us look a little more goofy and lost. A little bit more dramatically than potentially it is in real life.
Yeah.
But in Maui, we absolutely almost didn't make that keynote.
In our defense, and you can look at a map of this place, right? It's a complex looking thing, No?
It is. And somebody actually asked me, they said, Brad, why don't you help read the map and offer direction as well?
For the same reason Brad wouldn't help the day that his daughter's balloon flew away. He is busy filming it so that the rest of us can enjoy it.
It's important to document when your offspring realizes that it is a cruel world that we live in. And I am just so thankful that I have that image of my daughter's balloon about 10 feet above
And I'm thankful that we all have that image of your daughter. Also, the ball hitting your daughter in the face video, which is one of my all-time favorites still. Yes. It's a little less funny when I'm the butt of the joke, but yeah, I mean, whatever.
Yeah. And so if you haven't checked out that video, it's somewhere. It's just behind the scenes Maui. And that went up last Friday. Dude, so to your point of the travel, I've been so lost in just what day it is has been the bigger issue.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but anyways,
Yeah. No,
speak.
and by the way, I have too. And me complaining about this makes no sense because you've been traveling so much more. But yeah, I've experienced this week. It's like you wake up, you're like, what? Do I have to work today? Oh yeah, it's Wednesday. I got to work a lot today. You know.
And so the interesting thing about travel and all this stuff, because we were doing a lot of meetings, actually it was just George and I talking about 2018 for a bunch of different things. Not really fully up to speed about what's going on, but all I do know, Paul, and maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit, besides the fact that I don't know what day it is, we still don't know when the next big Windows 10 Insider build that they keep hyping up with like a 25,000 word post or something. Like that's
Yeah.
not...
Yeah. So Donna Sicard tweeted about that a few days ago, and the plan at the time was to deliver that build on Thursday. And then Thursday came and they realized they weren't going to be able to do it. And so what they said was it will be next week. So whenever this thing hits, it will be obviously the last build of the year. I mean, that makes tons of sense. But apparently it's like a big bang release. And it just occurred. I've asked this question a couple of times rhetorically, either on a podcast like this or in writing. But remember when Terry Myerson wrote an email to insiders about the coming two big features that were going to be like the next build or whatever, sets and timeline. We've known about timeline, so that one's kind of well understood. But then there was this controversy around sets because they were going to do A/B testing essentially and not let everyone get it. And everyone was all kind of burned about that. And the question I asked at the time, and still ask, frankly, is why would they announce this in an email? Like, they've never done that before, But
Right.
Here's my theory now, Brad. I think this is kind of supported by the timeline, pardon the pun, which is that we're getting actually pretty close to the release of this thing. We're well past the point where they would have held an event at which they would have described what's new in this release. I think that email essentially is these are the big features in this release. And some people, Mary Jo said this, certainly, I don't know who originated the idea, but there's been kind of a theory or a rumor or whatever that this release will be focused on productivity. And when you look at those two big features, timeline and sets, whether or not they do occur in this release, I mean, that's the other story with sets, obviously. It sort of supports that notion. So I think again, this is just a guess, a kind of speculation, but it seems to me that this release we're about to see is going to mark most of what we're going to see in the next release. I think that's the point. And they're going to say, yeah, between that heads up that Terry gave and the more detailed blog post that Brandon has written, this is the next release of Windows 10. So I think that's what's happening. So, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I will. I'm going to put this stake in the ground, Paul, that if Cloud Clipboard is not part of this release, I'm going to have to burn your house down. I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I understand. I really just kind of got this house the way I wanted it, so I'd appreciate if you could choose a different target. But I think the other thing that's kind of interesting, and I did write this, I think, yesterday or sometime this week, is that, because we had this conversation on the podcast when you said Raphael had posted something about sets maybe not being in the next release. And I later talked to him about, and I looked at what he had written, and I also looked very closely at what Terry had written in that email. And what I found is that actually it's very subtle, but way at the end of that email, he actually does sort of say something to the tune of this may not appear in the next version. It's the first time they've kind of acknowledged something like that. Also, it is literally the first time in the Windows Insider program that they have explicitly said, we're going to test a feature. It may not be in the next version. And if you think about what the Insider program is, to date, it has always been about testing what's in the next version. In fact, in the past, when they've done things like said, we're going to put my people in the creators update, and then they realized they're not going to be able to do it, they didn't allow us to test it. I mean, the code was kind of hidden in there for a couple of builds, but they took it away and they stopped working on it. And we didn't test that until we started testing the fall creators update when that feature did appear. So this marks the first time where they have kind of explicitly said, you guys are going to test a feature. It may not be in the next version, And that's an interesting dynamic when you think about it. Because I would say to date, any given Windows Insider build, I don't think anyone ever thought of this differently, represented some number of features that will be in the next version. At least that was always the plan, Sometimes it didn't work out that way, but I feel like something has changed. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I mean, I follow you, and I follow what you're saying. It's I'm not a big fan of uncertainty, and I don't think many people are. And I think that's kind of what's
Yes.
kind of like pushing me off about
Yep.
this is like they're talking about stuff, and it's do they truly know when it's going to launch? And it's I guess maybe it's fair to them that they're being honest. Like we don't really know if it's going to make it, but at the same time,
Yeah.
you kind of feel like this is a massive enterprise who's been building software for 30 years. You'd
And they
think
have
they'd
no
have
idea
these
what they're doing.
processes. Yeah, yeah. I
Here,
mean,
okay. So this was in that premium article you were referencing earlier, the Ask Paul article. And I would say to anyone watching this or listening to this to do this right now, go to apple.com, find the page that describes macOS High Sierra. Just find it and look at and read it. And what you will see, and whether I don't care if you like macOS or not, I don't really care for it personally, but look at what they did in this update, which is a once a year update to macOS. It's a legacy desktop operating system. It's a mature code base. And look at what they added to it in this version. It's a lot of fundamental stuff, a lot of low-level technologies, a lot of things that are not so much fit and finish from a UI perspective, although that stuff is there. It's more like fit and finish from a technology perspective. It's exactly what I want Microsoft to do with Windows 10. Now, go back and compare that to this. I hate to say it because I love the people that I know in the Windows Insider program at Microsoft. I think they're good people. They intend well or whatever. But there's a real half-assery occurring with Windows development right now that bothers me at a deep level because I care about Windows way more than I care about any of this other stuff. And when, you can pick something innocuous like Fluent Design System. We're going to implement this over time. So little bits and pieces of the OS are going to get like a UX upgrade with translucency and stuff. It might be 2 things in this release. It might be 10 more things in this release. We might do whatever. Over time, we're going to change it because we literally have no idea what this design system is, and we're going to use your feedback to change it over time. I'm sorry, but I would like to think that the people designing and creating Windows have more of a handle on such a basic thing as this. Community sourcing software development is one of those things that sounds cute and sounds right and sounds whatever. But as I watch this unfold, I get a deeply unsettled feeling about the kind of competency, professionalism, and correctness, I don't know how else to say it, of this system. And I'm worried. And I don't want to use the Mac. That's not my little Paul switch into the Mac thing or anything. Like, I really just don't care. I really care about Windows. I really do. I didn't say anything.
To Chromebook, are you?
No, I test these things all the time. And, you'll appreciate this because it's like the Mustang thing I talked about in Maui. My wife and I rented a convertible Mustang for one day, and it was fun for that one day. And now I know I never want to buy one of these vehicles, and that's what it's like every time I use a Chromebook, like a Pixelbook or the MacBook Pro that I bought and then returned, which is like, it was very interesting. I like it on a certain level. I don't want this thing. It's not what I like. And I want Windows to be better. It's coming from the right place.
Yeah, kind of moving on here because I'll fall asleep otherwise if I listen to you talk too much more.
I know I'm in total soapbox mode today. I apologize.
No, it's just any other day that ends in Y. So I know you wrote up about your hands-on experience with the Grammarly keyboard plugin. I've been using it, and I don't know if you remember this, but when I talked about it, what was it, Tuesday or Wednesday? I was like, hey, I switched to it, and you said, yeah, I tend to try these things out, but I always go back to the default keyboard. Well,
right.
I'm back to the default keyboard.
Okay, but I need to ask why. And then I just want to make one observation about this thing that I think is very interesting. But go on.
Yeah, very fair question. The number one reason why is iOS 11 third-party keyboard integration is still terrible. And a bunch of the times when I would go to type, it would pop up the old keyboard. And trying to jump between the two keyboards you never know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates. Like, oh, I'm going to type a tweet. Is it the normal keyboard or is it the Grammarly one that gives me better, punctuation? And so because iOS kind of sucks with that. Yep. I'm back.
Anyone who uses an iPhone is aware of this issue if they've tried a third-party keyboard. It's absolutely true. And I haven't had it on mine long enough. And I'm not going to, frankly, I don't use the iPhone primarily anyway, so it's going to be hard for me to notice that as much. It's not as bad of a problem on Android. The one thing I really like about this keyboard is that it looks and feels like the native keyboard on both platforms. And so if you're familiar with Gboard on Android or whatever the iOS keyboard is called on iOS, it looks exactly like them. And honestly, I think that will ease the transition for people because I personally have kind of an affinity for stock things on in different platforms. But the thing that's been bugging me about it, though, is the reason you get it, which is it pops up these little green boxes all the time, and they come from different sides of the screen depending on what kind of a pop-up it is. And I actually find them kind of distracting. Like,
it can be.
So I'll keep using it and see. But I mean, I'm attracted to it for the same reason you were, which is that we use Grammarly on the desktop and love it and rely on it. And it's completely understandable why someone who does that would want to use it on mobile too. So I'll keep trying, but non-stock keyboards are tough.
Yep. And then the other thing definitely worth pointing out, Meh is referred to him internally, but Mahedi or whatever, name of the day.
Whatever we're calling
he's a
him
good person. Wrote up a post.
Is there any evidence that he's a good person? I mean, do we even really know this guy?
That
when it
is
comes
really
down to it?
Actually. Yeah, he could be a huge jerk, actually. We don't.
He could, right. Yep. No promises, folks. That's all we're saying.
Yeah. We're going to take a road trip to London here and get that all sorted. But the quote-unquote Andromeda device that has shown up in patents, there's another new patent showing it off. To be honest, there's not a whole lot there. It still looks like a dual-screen, dual-hinge device. And we don't really know too much more.
It appears that the primary patents on this device have been related to the hinge. And, given Microsoft's experience with hinges, right, the Surface Studio behind you is a great example, or the Surface Book. Maybe that's not surprising. I'll try not to make a hinge pun like the success of this device hinges on. But sorry. It kind of makes sense.
Said you weren't going to do it.
I know. I'm a hypocrite. We've been over this. I feel like it makes sense that this is the type of work that Microsoft would do, and I would say that latest patent I don't think points to anything, frankly, other than some future Surface device hinge. I mean, so yeah, okay, yeah. Surface phone.
Confirmed, Paul.
Surface phone confirmed for 2018. Woo!
You heard it here first, folks. Paul.
No, you didn't. That's the sad thing. That's what's wrong with the internet.
Oh gosh, let's knock this one out here. Don't you like how I do that? How I'm able to make that not have the screensaver on there?
It's fairly impressive. It's sad that you don't have like a 55-inch 4K display to use for that purpose, but it's pretty good.
Really? that one hurts. That one hurts in the heart. But anyway, so folks, if you work in IT, if your business is expanding, you're adding new hardware, you're rolling up to Windows 10. These guys can make it a little bit easier. These guys are SmartDeploy. You can check them out at smartdeploy.com, and they've got a lot of good stuff to make this process a lot easier. Basically, if you've got hardware and you need to update it, maintain it, refresh it, SmartDeploy's got you covered. They've got this patented driver injection technology that brings everything you need with it. Like, it's realistically, they take the pain out of deployment and they make it pretty freaking simple. Best thing is they use wizards, and it's all point and click, and you can do everything you need, and it's just really simple and makes a bad process good and fun again. Save time, save headaches. Check them out, smartdeploy.com/Thurrott. Go grab those licenses, and you get 1 year of free support. It's definitely worth checking out. That's smartdeploy.com/Thurrott. And speaking of Thurrott, he's still here, isn't he? Unfortunately.
Sorry. I got excited when he pointed at the screen and said these guys could help, and I thought you meant us, but you were talking about SmartDeploy.
Oh, no. Paul, we try to help every Wednesday, and we failed dramatically. We are. We, we,
Yeah. Yeah. We try.
oh man, we do, we fail miserably. But you know what? We that's what we're here for. Quick side note: PUBG, which I can't really recommend yet. I don't know if an update has come out for that. Has hit 1 million at least sales on the Xbox platform. So people are buying it. I don't know if they're enjoying it, but they're definitely buying it.
That happened in days.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of pent up demand. So maybe I should give it another spin here. But I don't know.
I would
the first
first.
run. Yeah, that's probably.
I'll try it. I should try. I haven't gotten it yet, but I should try it on the Xbox One X and see if it's acceptable.
You should. I mean, well, there's a lot of issues. If you haven't read it yet, you can go read my fascinating post about why I played a couple of games and wasn't really loving. Yeah. Well, I was more talking to the the audience out there.
Gotcha. Right. Sorry, I forgot this isn't just you and I talking. Okay. Yep.
This isn't,
which could be dangerous, frankly, but
this isn't. Sometimes we have to remind Paul this isn't a Skype call,
right?
And there are actually quite a few people.
It's a private
watching.
Skype call.
This is us at our best, just knocking this stuff out. But God, I am delirious, I think is the best way to.
Now you know how I feel every day. That's fun.
I got nothing. I got nothing other than.
It's okay. It's okay. You'll think of it. Well, you'll wake up in the middle of the afternoon and be like, "This is what I should have said."
Well, no, I was actually more looking at OneNote, and it now says it's syncing, but it's only been open for 45 minutes. It's like permanently syncing. It's like the Titanic at this point. I don't know what it's doing. Anyways, folks, it is Friday, and on Friday we take a look back at some of the comments, the better stuff of the week. If you wrote a comment actually in the last 12 hours, it's not going to be in here, but because I built all this stuff before I got into the plane earlier today. But Paul, you wrote up a post earlier this week about how Edge is, lack of better terms, it is a disaster. And Bart writes, he says, Microsoft still doesn't uncouple Edge from Windows 10 to speed up development. They've been promising that it's coming to the store at some point. I'm not sure what's going to arrive first, iTunes or Edge in the store.
I addressed Edge in that Ask Paul article we keep referencing today as well. And, someone asked me, well, what would you do? Like, how would you fix this? Like, if you could run Edge or whatever. And the truth is, I feel like we've gotten into Windows Phone territory here. And what I mean by that is, I feel like Microsoft has done everything they can do pretty much to make a difference, And I also feel, to address what was just said about decoupling it and so forth, that you could pick any of these little fixes that people have, and more extensions, decoupling the browser from the OS is the obvious one. Is it really going to matter? I think the thing that's happened is behaviorally, people have gotten used to using third-party browsers and they like them, and that was the issue for Windows Phone. It wasn't that Windows Phone was lousy. There were good ideas there. There were no apps. That was a big problem. But people like the phones that they use. They just do. I mean, some people have a hard time believing that people like Chromebooks, for example, or Android or whatever. But the truth is, people do. And I think in the browser world, because Microsoft basically let IE go for so long, most users at some point looked into other browsers. And Firefox was a big deal right up front, and then more recently, Chrome. And the problem for Microsoft today, being on the other side of this equation, is that they have to make something that's better than what's out there. And how do you do that when these other browsers are being actively developed and delivered to hundreds and hundreds of millions of people who love them and have all their personal data in them and are used to the way they work? I think these people will buy a new computer at some point, and the first thing they're going to install is Chrome, and it's hard to overcome that behavior, even when you bundle, as Microsoft is doing, the product into the OS. I just think we're in a different world. And I think the mobile web browser parallels kind of hold up. Yeah.
The other thing too is that Edge feels like I hate using this Wayne Gretzky comment, but you know what? They're skating to where the puck was, not where it's going.
Yep.
And that's kind of hard because, to your point, Firefox and Chrome are being actively developed right now, right? They're
Yeah.
adding new features that'll ship in the next 6 weeks. And so Edge is
Yep.
trying to play catch up. And every time a new version of Chrome comes out, it's one more feature they've got to build up to
Yep.
at
That's right.
least be comparable. So, yeah.
This argument comes up a lot in tech. I argue a lot about Google and the pricing of their devices, and it doesn't matter if Pixel 2 XL is better, worse, or indifferent compared to a Samsung Galaxy S8 or a Apple iPhone 10 or whatever. You can't justify that level of pricing when you're the newcomer in this market and you're untested and unproven and unknown. And that was this kind of falls into this category. It's easy enough to test a browser. But it's like Windows Phone in the sense that when that one thing you want is not there, and that one thing could literally be an extension, it could be a feature like web notification support or whatever it might be. You just say, well, I don't have to stop trying. Why would I hurt myself to use this thing when the thing I am already using works perfectly well? It's a hard thing to overcome.
The next comment comes from, and I like this guy's name, but it was on where Microsoft didn't promise sets for the next version of Windows 10.
Yep.
His name is King Nerd the Third. He writes, he said, I think it's a good thing there's no timeline at the moment for when these features will be added. He said, look at my people. It was promised and delivered, and when it was promised and delivered when it was promised, but it was delivered unfinished. I say finish timeline and sets, and then release them when that happens. And so I can't disagree that, release the product when it's finished, but then also don't announce it until you know you're going to be able to hit that timeline. So I don't know.
Pardon the pun.
That's kind of
that's interesting. That's an incredibly astute and intelligent observation, and which is kind of bothering me because you actually picked two things this week that are good. And that means that you did something right. But anyway, the problem the problem with timeline, which is the problem with my people, which is the problem with the hub strategy that Microsoft had with Windows Phone, is great idea, but it requires third-party buy-in. And this is the area where Microsoft has kind of failed. It's not their fault explicitly, but they've had a hard time attracting major third-party support for these initiatives. So, for example, my people, to use the example he provided, is an interesting idea. It's a people-centric thing. This is an idea Microsoft has been working on since Windows Phone. As of today, to my knowledge, it still doesn't work with any important third-party services. And so your ability to communicate with your friends, your people, is basically relegated to email through the mail app, communications through Skype, and what's the other one? I think that's it. That was the third one, but I can't remember what the other one is. It's basically the built-in apps in Windows 10. And so it's really limited. And I think, again, as with Edge or with Windows Phone or whatever, I think a lot of people will look at it and say, what is this? And say, oh, yeah, and that's the end of that. Timeline, the reason it was delayed from the Creators Update to the current release, by the way, was that it requires that third-party support, and that was never going to happen in that time frame. I'm sorry, from the fall Creators Update to the next update. So we're only testing that now. In fact, we're not now, but as of next week, I guess we finally will be. But it hinges on third-party support. So imagine if you used, I got to think of an example. I mean, this is a dumb example because no one uses it. But if you used WordPerfect or something, if this thing only integrates with Microsoft Word from a word processing document perspective, timeline is worthless to you. And that's kind of the problem. It needs to work with all of the stuff that you use for it to be truly valuable.
Yep. I agree. I got nothing that counteracts that. I do want to point out one thing. Kind of, you were hitting on it, and then I don't know, whatever. But it reminded me of when I was flying today. Delta now lets you do chatting for free over their Wi-Fi, so you don't have to pay for GoGo. But the only apps they let you use are iMessage, WhatsApp, and Facebook Messenger.
Oh, jeez. Wow. And what major messaging solution does that leave out?
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of thing just chips away at all the stuff that we use, doesn't it? I mean, it's one example, but it's tough.
Yep. So You can go look at it. I tweeted out a picture of it because I saw it and I was like, oh, that is kind of, I mean, granted, it is kind of nice. You can text message or iMessage, I should say. But then I was like, well, Skype's not on there. Whoops.
Is that
well,
list of
not as
apps,
helpful.
are those all text messaging apps that also support messaging over IP? Is that the common element there,
Yeah,
or is it
so
just?
I don't think you can actually text message. You can only use these messaging apps. I
Okay, so
believe.
it's like the just the internet-based messaging.
Yep.
Well, that's all
Yeah.
Skype is. So,
Yes.
so hello, anybody?
Yes. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Ah, man. King.
Yep.
Oh God, King Nerd the Third. Which again, best name I think on the site.
Awesome name. Yep, awesome.
He just said my day has been made. He's actually in the chat room, so that's amazing.
No, that's funny. That's the best name I've ever seen by far. Yep.
You know what's also going to be amazing here, Paul?
You taking a nap?
Yes. You got anything else for today?
Yeah, let's drag it out because I know you want to sleep. No, I got a bunch of I've got an interview to transcribe that I hope to post soon. I've got a bunch of hardware reviews. I've been doing battery life tests all week. That's usually the final stage for me. So I would say over the weekend and over the next week, I hope to post and kind of catch up on a little bit the hardware stuff. So I won't belabor the point, but I have been working on it.
And now you're going to solve a Rubik's Cube. Like on the air. It's like,
yeah, while you wait. What do you think? Yellow or blue?
Yes. Oh, God. Orange. Orange. Folks, today's show is brought to you by SmartDeploy, hardware independent imaging software for businesses with 50 to 50,000 users. Check them out at smartdeploy.com/Throttle. Also, there's a couple ads right around these podcasts. And if nothing else, Paul, have yourself a wonderful weekend.
You too.